I froze on the restaurant floor as my teenage boyfriend dropped to one knee, and my family began clapping before I could even breathe. My chest burned with panic while strangers filmed my face, waiting for tears that never came. I said no, and the word landed like a slap across every smiling face at the table. That was the moment my own family decided I was the problem. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe and share. Your support keeps the stories coming. The ring box stayed open between us, shaking in his hands, while my mother hissed my name like a warning. I could feel the heat of judgment crawl up my neck. I was 19, still figuring out who I was, and everyone around me acted like my life had already been signed away. When I stood up and apologized to the crowd, my voice sounded calm, but my legs felt weak. I told him I was not ready for marriage, not ready to be owned by a future I did not choose. The room went silent, then loud in the worst way. Chairs scraped, people whispered, someone laughed out of shock, someone else muttered that I was ungrateful. On the drive home, my mother did not speak to me. My father stared straight ahead, jaw tight. My sisters filled the silence with sighs and sharp looks. By the time we reached the house, the story had already been rewritten. I was selfish. I had humiliated a good boy. I had thrown away security. No one asked how I felt. No one cared that I had been scared. They only cared that I had ruined a moment they wanted to brag about. My ex had been my boyfriend since we were kids. Our families were close. Holidays blurred together. Everyone assumed marriage was inevitable. When I tried to explain that love did not mean surrender, my words fell flat. My middle sister, Claire, took it the hardest, or so I thought. She had always liked him, not in a romantic way, she said, but in a protective, loyal way. She started calling him every day after the breakup, checking on him, bringing him food, telling him that I would regret this. At family dinners, his name became a weapon. Claire would mention how sad he looked, how patient he was, how rare men like him were. She spoke as if I had died, as if my choice was a betrayal against all of them. When I asked her to stop, she smiled and said she was just being honest. The more I pulled back, the closer she leaned in. It felt like she was taking my place, piece by piece. I tried to move on quietly. I focused on school. I took extra shifts at work. I saved money in secret. I stopped going to events where I knew I would be cornered. But my family noticed my distance and took it personally. Every gathering turned into an interrogation. Why was I still single? Why was I so cold? Why could not I just apologize and fix things? Claire watched all of this with bright eyes, like someone waiting for a door to open. The first public humiliation came at my cousin's engagement party. I arrived late, hoping to blend in, and found my ex sitting at our family table. No one warned me. Claire waved me over and announced loudly that she thought it would be nice for us to talk like adults. People stared. Someone handed us drinks. My ex avoided my eyes. I felt small, exposed, like a lesson being taught in front of an audience. When I left early, my mother told me I was dramatic. That night, I made a decision no one knew about. I applied to study abroad. I filled out forms at midnight, hiding paperwork under my mattress. I imagined a place where my choices were mine alone. While my family whispered about my failure, I worked. While Claire built a story about my regret, I planned my escape. No one saw the effort. No one expected me to succeed. The tension in the house thickened. Claire grew bolder. She started inviting my ex to things without asking. She shared private details about my life with him, then claimed it was an accident. When I confronted her, she accused me of being cruel, of punishing everyone from my mistake. My parents agreed with her. I learned to stay quiet, to smile, to wait. The day before I left for a short weekend trip with friends, I stopped by a local bar to meet someone from work. As I walked in, laughter hit me first. Then I saw them. Claire was at a corner table, leaning close to a man who looked painfully familiar. Same eyes, same mouth, older, broader. He turned and I recognized him instantly. It was my ex's brother, and they were holding hands. I didn't say anything. I stood there long enough to be seen, long enough for Claire's smile to freeze when her eyes met mine. Then I walked back out into the cold. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit in my car for 10 minutes before I could drive. By the time I got home, my phone was already buzzing. Claire called first, then my mother, then my ex. No one asked if I was okay. They wanted to know why I had left so abruptly, why I had made things awkward, why could I not just be happy for her? By morning, the story was official. Claire was in love. It was unexpected. It just happened, and I was supposed to be mature about it. When I said it felt wrong, that it kept my ex tied to my life in a way I never agreed to, my mother told me I was being selfish again. My father said families were complicated and I needed to grow up. Claire cried and said she had finally found happiness and I was trying to ruin it out of spite. From that point on, my boundaries stopped mattering. My ex was suddenly everywhere. Birthday dinners, Sunday lunches, holidays. If I skipped an event, I was accused of making a statement. If I attended, I was forced into polite conversation under watchful eyes. Claire loved to sit across from me and bring up old memories, laughing about things that used to belong to me. She would apologize in public, loudly, for how hard everything must be for me, turning my discomfort into a performance. I left for my study abroad program 3 months later. No one threw me a party. No one asked about my plans. Claire hugged me at the airport and whispered that distance would help me get over everything. I smiled and nodded. Inside, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time, my life didn't revolve around managing other people's feelings. Abroad, I changed. I studied harder than I ever had. I worked part-time. I built friendships that weren't tied to my past. I met my future husband in a quiet library, both of us reaching for the same book. He didn't know my family. He didn't know my ex. He knew me as I was in that moment, not as a role I was supposed to play. Loving him felt easy, safe, real. Back home, Claire filled the gap I left behind. She moved in with my ex's brother. She hosted gatherings I wasn't invited to. When I did visit during breaks, she made sure my ex was there, always under the excuse of family. At one dinner, she placed me directly between them, then laughed and said it was fate testing us. Everyone laughed with her. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried quietly, staring at my reflection and wondering when my pain had become entertainment. Years passed. I graduated with honors. I built a career. I got engaged. My family found out through social media. Claire called me screaming, accusing me of hiding my life out of spite. She demanded to meet my fiancé. When I hesitated, she told everyone I was ashamed of him. At her insistence, my parents pressured me to bring him to her wedding. Her wedding was beautiful, expensive, full of people who barely knew me but had opinions about my life. Claire put me at a table with my ex, smiling sweetly as she explained there were no other seats. My fiancé was placed across the room, alone. During the reception, Claire took the microphone and thanked everyone for supporting her through difficult years, casting a long look in my direction. People turned to stare. I felt that old familiar burn of humiliation crawl up my chest. Then something shifted. A guest recognized me from my work. Someone congratulated me loudly on a recent achievement Claire had never mentioned. Conversations paused. Questions followed. For the first time, the room realized I had a life beyond this family drama. Claire's smile faltered. She pulled me aside later and accused me of stealing her spotlight. That night, I went home knowing something had broken for good. I stopped answering her calls. When I announced my pregnancy months later, my family staged an intervention. They brought my ex with them, saying I needed to forgive and move on for the sake of peace. When Claire showed up uninvited at my house, pounding on my door while I was pregnant and terrified, I realized peace would never come from keeping her close. I called the police with shaking hands, not knowing that one decision would change everything that came next. The protective order hearing was quiet, almost clinical, nothing like the chaos my sister had brought to my doorstep. Claire sat across the room, eyes red, dressed like a victim, while my ex hovered behind her family like a familiar shadow. I told the judge exactly what had happened: the uninvited visits, the messages, the pounding on my door while I was pregnant and alone. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I spoke slowly, clearly, like someone who had learned the cost of being misunderstood. When the order was granted, Claire let out a sound I had never heard before, something between anger and disbelief. She looked at me like I had committed a crime. My mother would not meet my eyes. My father looked older, smaller. For the first time, no one tried to spin the story. There was paperwork, there were rules, there were consequences. The silence that followed was strange. My phone stopped buzzing, family group chats went quiet, holidays passed without invitations. I felt grief, but it was clean, not sharp. I focused on my health, on my baby, on my husband, who never once asked me to make peace for the comfort of others. He held my hand at night and told me I was brave, even when I did not feel like it. When our child was born, my world narrowed to something simple and fierce. Late nights, soft breathing, a tiny hand gripping my finger. My brother visited first, awkward and gentle, bringing food and apologies. My father came next, alone. He stood in the doorway, looking at his grandchild like he was seeing a future he had almost lost. He said he was sorry for not protecting me when I needed it most. I believed him. Claire tried one last time. A letter arrived, pages long, blaming stress, love, misunderstanding. She wrote about family unity, forgiveness, how everything had gone too far. There was no apology that did not circle back to me. I did not respond. I filed it away and closed the drawer. Years later, my life looks nothing like the one they planned for me. I built a career they once dismissed. I married a man who treats me with respect. I raised a child in a home without fear. My ex is a distant name. Claire is a boundary I no longer explain. Some family members still think I was too harsh. Others quietly admit they understand now. What I learned is simple, even if it took me years to accept. Protecting yourself is not revenge. It is not cruelty. It is not selfishness. It is choosing peace over performance, safety over appearances, and truth over forced loyalty. I was once the girl everyone blamed for saying no. Now I am the woman who knows that no saved her life.